What if the real enemy was never outside the walls? What if civilizations didn't collapse because of invasion, but because they stopped trusting each other? History has a dark pattern. Again and again, survival required unity. But leaders chose suspicion, societies chose fear, and neighbors became threats. Before we begin, if you're not subscribed to Top 10 Untold yet, this is your warning. This channel exposes the psychological patterns that destroyed empires. Subscribe now because what you're about to hear might explain the world you're living in. Let's begin. Warning 10. When Rome started killing its own generals. At its peak, the Roman Empire didn't fall because barbarians were stronger. It fell because emperors stopped trusting their best defenders. In the 3rd century, Rome faced external chaos: Goths, Persians, economic collapse. Survival required strong generals, loyal commanders, coordinated defense. Instead, emperors began purging them. Successful generals were seen as threats to the throne. Victories became suspicious. Popularity became dangerous. Emperor after emperor executed their own military leaders, not for treason proven, but for treason feared. The result: armies became cautious. Leadership became temporary. No one dared to win too much. When trust between emperor and army shattered, Rome's defenses weakened from the inside. Barbarians didn't destroy Rome. Paranoia hollowed it out first. Present parallel. Today, institutions that punish competence because it threatens hierarchy risk the same fate. When leaders fear their strongest allies, collapse accelerates. Future question: if excellence becomes suspicious in your society, who will defend it when crisis comes? Warning 9. The legal paranoia of the Qin dynasty. The Qin dynasty unified China in 221 BCE. But unity built on fear does not last. Qin Shi Huang centralized power aggressively. Books were burned. Scholars buried alive. Laws became tools of suspicion. Citizens were required to report each other. Collective punishment was normalized. Trust between neighbors vanished. The system worked briefly. It enforced obedience. It crushed dissent. But it also destroyed loyalty. When rebellion sparked, no one defended the regime. The dynasty collapsed in less than 15 years. Why? Because a society trained to spy on itself cannot unite when real danger comes. Present parallel. Surveillance culture creates compliance, not devotion. When citizens fear speaking freely, they eventually stop believing. Future question: if everyone watches everyone, who will stand together when it truly matters? Warning 8. Stalin's purges of his own army. In the 1930s, the Red Army was one of the largest in the world. Then came the paranoia of Joseph Stalin. Between 1937 to 1938, he purged thousands of officers, including top commanders. Why? He feared coups. He feared popularity. He feared betrayal. When Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the Soviet military was leaderless, inexperienced, terrified. Millions died in the early phase. Paranoia had removed competence. Stalin eventually reversed course, but the damage was catastrophic. Present parallel. When organizations eliminate internal critics and experienced voices, they weaken crisis response. Future question: if your strongest defenders are silenced? Who stands between you and disaster? Warning 7 Cultural Revolution. When suspicion became virtue. In 1966, Mao Zedong unleashed the Cultural Revolution. Students turned on teachers. Children denounced parents. Colleagues accused colleagues. Trust became counter-revolutionary. The Red Guards were encouraged to suspect everyone. Intellectuals were humiliated. Experts were attacked. History was erased. China lost a generation of stability. When suspicion becomes moral duty, society fractures beyond repair. Present parallel. When ideology replaces dialogue, polarization intensifies. When disagreement equals betrayal, unity dies. Future question. If trust is redefined as weakness, how long before relationships become battlegrounds? Warning 6 Khmer Rouge. Killing the loyal. The regime of the Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot didn't just execute perceived enemies. They executed their own members. Internal purges escalated as paranoia deepened. Prisons like Tuol Sleng filled with party officials accused of imagined conspiracies. The revolution devoured itself. By the end, even loyalty was unsafe. Nearly 2 million Cambodians died not from invasion, but from internal suspicion. Present parallel. Extremism feeds on fear, and eventually, it feeds on itself. Future question. When a movement fears internal purity more than external threats, how long before it self-destructs? Warning 5 Salem witch trials. In 1692, in Salem, fear spread like wildfire. Young girls accused neighbors of witchcraft. Spectral evidence was accepted. Trust vanished overnight. 20 people were executed. What started as fear became hysteria. When suspicion spreads unchecked, rationality collapses. Present parallel. Viral accusations. Mob mentality. Online outrage cycles. We've seen it before. Future question. If evidence becomes optional, who protects the innocent? Warning for McCarthyism and the Red Scare. In 1950s America, Joseph McCarthy fueled anti-communist hysteria. Careers were destroyed on suspicion. Hollywood blacklists. Government investigations. Public accusations. The fear of infiltration justified the erosion of trust. America survived but not without scars. Present parallel. Security versus liberty remains a delicate balance. Fear can justify almost anything. Future question. When national survival is invoked, how much freedom are we willing to sacrifice? Warning 3 Authoritarian intelligence states. From secret police networks to mass surveillance regimes, authoritarian systems often prioritize monitoring over trust. Citizens learn to whisper. Friendships become cautious. Creativity declines. Such systems may appear stable but they are brittle. Because trust is the invisible infrastructure of resilience. Without it, societies obey, but they don't endure. Warning 2 Corporate surveillance culture. Modern corporations track keystrokes, monitor emails, score productivity in real time. The intention, efficiency. The result, distrust. When employees feel watched instead of trusted, innovation slows. High-performing teams rely on psychological safety, not fear. History shows. Paranoia reduces adaptability. Warning 1 The social distrust age. We now live in an era where institutions distrust citizens. Citizens distrust institutions. Neighbors distrust each other. Algorithms amplify outrage. The information age has become the suspicion age. Polarization rises. Echo chambers deepen. Assumptions replace dialogue. History warns us. Civilizations collapse when trust erodes faster than threats grow. Paranoia feels protective, but it isolates. And isolated societies cannot survive large-scale crisis. Final psychological question: if everyone becomes the enemy, who is left to stand beside you? If this episode unsettled you, it was meant to. Because the pattern is clear. Empires don't just fall from invasion. They fall when trust dies. If you value deep psychological history that exposes uncomfortable truths, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Top 10 Untold doesn't just tell stories. We decode survival patterns, and the next collapse might already be forming.